Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, we'll be talking about the CFP changing to a 5+7 model, exactly what that means. We'll be going in depth with that. And then we're also going to be talking about what's going on with the basketball team, the things that I like, the things that I don't like, what I want to see changed before we get into the tournament. And we'll also be talking about a couple of players that I feel like some Tennessee fans might be overlooking, but I do think that they will have a big breakout season in 2024. And that's a big part of the reason that I'm picking Tennessee to be the national champions. But before we get into anything, please do us a huge favor. Like and subscribe to the channel, especially if this is not your first time here. If you like our content, that helps us out tremendously. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the CFP 5+7 model. All right, so this is directly from the NCAA's website. And we'll start right here where it says how CFP teams are selected under new format. The new 12-team college football playoff field will include the 5 highest-ranked conference champions, which will receive automatic bids. The 7 highest-ranked teams remaining will round out the 12-team format. And it goes on to say that the top 4 teams will receive a first-round bye to the quarterfinals. All right, now let's move on to where it says where CFP games will be played. As mentioned before, the 4 highest-ranked conference champions will be seeded numbers 1 through 4 and receive a first-round bye. Seeds 5 through 12 will play each other in the first round. The higher seeded teams will play host in their first round games. And up under that, it's got a breakdown of what that would look like. It's going to be number 5 versus number 12, number 6 versus number 11, number 7 versus number 10, and number 8 versus number 9. We all know that's pretty standard in how playoffs work pretty much in every single sport. So all that makes sense. Now, up under that, it says New Year's 6 bowl games will be introduced in the quarterfinals round. The semifinals will be played in bowls on a rotating basis, while the national championship host site is determined through bids by prospective host sites. All right, now let's scroll on down, and it's going to talk about how things would have looked if we had this system implemented this past season. And what you're looking at right now are the, top, what is this right here, 19 to 20 teams, but it really is only going to be the top 12, okay? And I think, obviously we can look at this and we could tell that if it was this season, it would be different because Michigan and Washington play in the same conference now in the Big Ten. So Michigan would end up getting that number 1 seed, but we're not going to go too far into that. I just kind of wanted to bring that, to y'all's attention so that we can keep that in mind on how this thing works. It's not the 5 highest ranked teams. It's going to be the 5 conference champions. And something else that I read was that the wording was very intentional in this meeting to exclude the group of 5 programs. And I think that the reason for that is because it really is all about the Power 4 conferences. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go down. But let me continue to scroll and show y'all about the way that things would look. Okay, so right here for the first round, it would have been Liberty versus Florida State, Ole Miss versus Georgia, Penn State versus Ohio State, and Missouri versus Oregon. And under that, it's talking about how the top 4 ranked teams will receive a first round bye. Again, that kind of goes back to, we know that there's really only 4 major conferences in college football at this point. There was the Pac-12, but now it's the Pac-2 because it's only Oregon State and Washington State in that conference. And I did some reading on how their schedules are going to be looking this season. They're going to be playing up against a bunch of like mid-major types of programs. So for them to make it into the playoffs, they will not be able to receive a first round bye. And the same thing goes for Notre Dame, because in football, Notre Dame is still independent. And I think that moving forward, what this means is, obviously with those Pac-2 schools, they're going to be looking for a conference, but I also think that Notre Dame is going to want to find a conference to go to moving forward so that they have a better opportunity, in the playoffs to be able to win a national title. Because at this point, again, they will not have that first round bye. Now, any of those 3 teams could still end up getting a first round home game, which is, good. But I think that you would rather have that bye and be able to forego that first round, because you can definitely get beat in that first round. So let's continue to scroll. Let's see what else they've got down here. Okay, so now this is something else that's very interesting. They're talking about the bowl game format, and this is how things are going to be looking for the next couple of seasons. Okay, so something else that is actually going to be happening today in a CFP board committee meeting, they're going to be talking about doing away with the old contracts for the New Year's bowl games. Something else that they'll be talking about is getting the TV deals fixed or, getting them changed. All of that will be taking place after the 26th season. And as we've talked about several times, it's probably going to be more geared towards a 2 conference system. But I'm hoping that at the end of the day, they end up trying to implement a playoff system that is similar to what the NFL's looks like with 14 teams. That's where I think it's ultimately going to go. That's a system that we know works. It's tried and true. But this doesn't really mean a whole lot for our Volunteers, in my opinion. And the reason that I'm saying that is because it's still about winning that conference championship, okay? Like, that's what is going to mean the most for every single conference. And again, even once we move to the 2-conference system, I'm sure that that's going to hold a whole lot of weight. The best teams from each conference, very similar to the NFL, will end up getting that first round bye, and then they'll be able to play up against the lowest seeds all the way up to what would end up being the national championship. But it's pretty much status quo, okay? I think that it's going to end up, for the most part, being over these next 2 seasons, the highest 12 ranked teams are going to be the ones that make it in. Now, there can be a situation where there's a conference that has several losses and their conference champion isn't ranked that highly, in the CFP model. They might be outside of that top 12, but they will still get precedent to get into the playoffs because they were conference champions, especially if they come from a Power 4 conference. But just moving forward, again, I don't really see that happening. I don't think it's going to be a ton of parity. It's going to essentially be the same teams that it has been. Now, if you talk about the Big 12, they might have some parity because Texas and Oklahoma are leaving from there. Who's going to be the front runner? Not quite sure, but I do think that it's probably just going to play out the way that it always has, where it's going to end up being the top 12 ranked teams. And since the group of 5 teams are, kind of excluded from the wording, I think that they will always end up just automatically being ranked outside of the top 4. They're just going to end up being ranked at number 5, even if they go undefeated. I think that that's kind of why the wording was the way that it was, to exclude them. But that's pretty much all I have on this. Y'all let me know y'all's thoughts down in the comments section. Let's go ahead and move on to our basketball team. All right, so last night our Vols beat the Missouri Tigers in Missouri 72-67. There's some things that I liked about the game, some things that I really didn't like, especially moving forward into the tournament. That's what I care the most about. I don't too much care about winning the SEC. Of course, you want to win games. You want to kind of win your conference, but I'm more concerned about how we're going to be playing in that tournament. It doesn't matter if you win your conference and you end up losing early on in the tournament. That's what matters the most to me. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about in this segment. But number one, okay, Dalton Knecht. Okay, we're going to pull this video off for y'all. He had a nice stretch where he just took over the game and got Tennessee back in position to win. And this is what superstars do, okay? I trust him more than anybody else on this team. He's been the most consistent player on this team. He can score. He may need to work on his defense some, okay, but he does a good job just showing effort for the most part. I also think that he's going to need to work on his free throws moving forward because we've seen here lately teams are double and triple teaming him. They're doing their best to stop him, but you really can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. So I think that Dalton Knecht is going to continue to do what he's done pretty much since he's been in Knoxville. Now, the biggest person that I want to talk about getting some more playing time is Tobe Awaka. I love him playing at the 4 for us. I just like how it looks going into the playoffs, going into the tournament, because we're going to have more presence in that post area, somebody who can score on a more consistent basis. And whenever you're looking at our guards, right, so Santi, he's very inconsistent, extremely streaky. You could say maybe the same thing about Gainey, but at this point, I trust Gainey more than I trust Santi. And then you got to talk about Josiah Jordan-James. He's a guy that we are expecting a lot from, especially going into the tournament. But again, man, he kind of just falls off the map sometimes. I don't know if he had any points. Last night, he might have had 2. And I think that Santi only had like 1. So whenever guys like Dalton Knecht are not able to score on a consistent basis, okay, he was able to do it last night. He had a great run. We've seen him do it several times. But I don't think that he's going to be able to sustain that throughout the tournament versus some better teams. So we're going to need some guys who can pick up that slack. I want to be able to score. I want to be more dominant. And I kind of hate to put this out there before we pick our brackets, but what I look for in tournament teams that I feel like can go far, is a dominance to be able to score, to be able to play solid defense, just to be able to do what you do. And it doesn't look like you're having to struggle to do it. It's not a whole lot of you got to try hard all the time or you got to be hot. I don't really like teams that play that way. And that's kind of the way that basketball is kind of moved towards here lately. It's about shooting the threes, about getting to the basket and getting some easy shots. I lean more towards kind of like the 90s model where you've got 2 dominant forces down in the paint. that can get you rebounds, that can play good, solid defense, that can stop those easy buckets. But on the other end of the court, they can also get you those easy buckets. And obviously, getting those rebounds, it gives your shooters and your scorers second chance opportunities. That's what I like to see. That's what I want to see. To me, I will feel a lot more comfortable with that type of a model, because our guards and everybody else, like our fours, wing guys, they're just not playing consistent outside of Dalton. So if it was me, my starting lineup at this point would probably be ZZ, okay, Gainey, obviously Dalton. He's always going to be in the starting lineup. I will go with Tobey, and then I will go with Adu, because I think that they feed off of one another very well. Now, I know that they haven't played that well together throughout the entire season, but again, we're talking about in the tournament, you need to be able to get some surefire buckets sometimes, especially if Dalton can't do it all for you. Give him two big post presence down there that they can feed the basketball to, and we can get some points. We can kind of stay in the game until everyone else kind of gets hot, and then we can kind of rotate at the two position. If Santi starts to heat up, then start him. You know what I mean? But let's play the hot hand. I think that having two more dominant presence in the post will help Tennessee out tremendously. Again, to be able to play some very solid defense, stop the easier buckets, get those rebounds, and then also on the other side of the court, be able to get those easy buckets on top of it. All right, so for this last segment, we're going to be talking about two players that I think are going to have some huge breakout seasons for our Volunteers, and some of y'all might have forgot about them, but we're going to start off with Tyree Weathersby. All right, so Tyree West is a four-star defensive end out of Georgia. He was listed at 6'4", 251 pounds coming out of high school. And he's a guy that the insiders up in Knoxville said was pushing to be a starter at the strong side defensive end this past season over Tyler Barron. So that should tell you a lot, okay, about how good of a player he is, especially because he didn't come in spring. He came in over the summer. That's very, very hard to do, but he was my favorite in that class. I said that out of all the players that we needed to watch on that defensive front as true freshmen last season, he was my favorite, and I still feel that way to this day. Now, he ended up getting hurt in spring. I believe he had like a hip dislocation or something, had to have surgery. He was out for the entire season. But looking at this picture right here, you can tell that he probably went from about 250 to 265-ish, maybe even 270. So he's about as big as Tyler Barron was this past season. And I think that he's going to be a stud. I really sincerely do, not just in run support, but also getting after that passer. Let's pull up his senior film. All right, now as we're watching this film, the first thing that has always jumped off to me is his size, right? In high school, he's got an SEC caliber defensive end body already. Again, 6'4", 6'5", 250 pounds. He's already bigger than James Pierce is on this film. And as we talked about, he looks like he's gained a lot of weight, but you also see the burst off of the football. You're seeing that straight line speed. He's a very twitchy athlete. And what we're going to ask him to do in our system is to set a strong edge, be able to stop the run on a consistent basis, disengage with blockers, in a multitude of different ways, but also to get after the quarterback. And that's something that I think he can do at a very high level. Now, I don't remember exactly how many sacks Tyler Barron had this past season, but I am going to go on ahead out on a limb and say that Tyree Weathersby will end up having more. I think that he could potentially be a double-digit sack guy, especially considering that James Pierce is going to be getting double and triple teamed a lot of the time, at least to start the season off. But as the word gets out on Tyree Weathersby, I am definitely thinking that it's going to be difficult for any offense to be able to stop what Tennessee can do up front, because we've also got guys like Joshua Josephs, Tyree West came on late last season. Obviously, we got Jordan Ross coming in. Jason Jenkins is a guy that James Pierce spoke very highly of. But we've got a lot of guys, okay? You can even talk about our defensive tackles, guys who can plug up gaps well, who are also twitchy and can get after the quarterback. I think that Tennessee will be able to get a consistent rush with just our front four. And then if you add some exotic blitzes in there every now and then, it's going to be an absolute and total nightmare playing man-to-man coverage behind all that. I'm telling y'all, man, Tyree Weathersby is about to have a huge season, not only as a pass rusher, but I also think that just in stopping the run. Whenever you're watching him here, look at how quickly he's able to beat these blocks. He's not just doing it with his speed or not just with the bull rush, but he shows some quick swim moves. He's got fast hands. He shows spin moves. And it's difficult to find a defensive lineman on this level that has so many moves, this early on. So he's just going to continue to get better. And obviously kind of sitting out, having that injury this past season, I know that he learned a lot mentally, and there's probably a lot of mental reps that he got thinking, hey, I can do this, I can try that. And I feel like that makes players tremendously better. I know he's going to want to prove a point, but he's going to be someone for us to keep a close eye on in the spring. Don't be surprised if you hear everybody raving about Tyree Weathersby. I'm telling you, I think he's going to be a double-digit sack guy in 2024. And the last guy that we're going to be talking about today is Deshaun Bishop. So he's another guy who had a season-ending injury early on last season. I want to say it was in the spring game. So, you know, he missed everything. But he was another one that the insiders and the coaches were all raving about just how talented he is. And I didn't fully expect for him to be as good as he looked like he was early on this past season. He played in a lower classification in Tennessee. I believe that he is from Knoxville. So, you know, he probably grew up loving Tennessee. But I didn't think that he had the size that was necessary to come in and contribute as a true freshman. But he was well on his way to doing that. And we only rotated 3 backs this past season. I think we'll do something similar this year. So is he still going to be on the outside looking in? I'm not sure. But he's not one that I would ever count out again, because what we saw from last season, he can ball, okay? He can really do a lot of different things in our offense. He can run between those tackles. That was my biggest concern. But he's got a lot of speed. He can make people miss, you know, again, inside of a phone booth, which is important. He runs hard. He can catch the football out of the backfield well. But I really think that he's going to contribute significantly on special teams. We also have Boo Carter. So whenever you're talking about who's going to be on kickoff return, those 2 guys, I mean, pick your poison. You better squib it or kick it out of bounds or something. You might be better off doing that, because either one of those guys can take it to the house. They're very, very dynamic with the football in their hands. And then obviously we've also got a guy like Cam Seldon who did it this past season. But I do think that we're going to take a huge step forward on special teams because of playmakers like this. And again, I just really would not be surprised to see Deshaun Bishop earn a, you know, higher role this season, maybe working to that 3-back rotation. It's going to be a very fun battle to see who ends up winning out, because we've got several good backs in that stable. Okay, this is why I really truly believe that Tennessee has a good opportunity to win a national championship, not just because we've got great players that are potentially going to be starters, but also because we've got some great depth behind them. We're very deep at several key positions, and then having Nico as your quarterback, we can do a lot of different things. I just feel like Coach Heupel can open everything up so much more, and we can exploit whatever weaknesses a defense will have. It doesn't matter if it's SEC, Big Ten, it doesn't matter. I feel very confident in what we have on offense and on defense. But those are 2 names for y'all to keep a close eye on coming up in spring. And that's going to be it for this video. As always, thank y'all for staying all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.